Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking this afternoon about youth and voice. And I want to just say that voice can be manifested in two ways, either through advocacy on behalf of a population by others, or by participation of that population itself in defining its needs, aspirations, and realities. And in what follows, I hope that it becomes clear that I am not speaking for youth, because I think that they are fully capable, as the recent events as well as historical events have indicated, of speaking for themselves. So what I'm going to be doing is pointing to particular factors that evidence suggests may be important catalysts for youth to be able to speak out. And I do hope that the youth in this audience, and maybe all of you consider yourself youth, but the youth in this audience will choose to use their own voice energetically and passionately to define their own needs, aspirations, and realities in the discussion that follows this panel, but also in their communities in the months and years to follow. So the title of this particular segment of the panel is Youth as Agents of Change, Thoughts on Social Determinants of Health, Dignity, and Voice. And what I'll be doing is sort of deconstructing this title, not in any specific order, with reference generally to the recent events in the Arab world, but with no specific particularities. So if we start with youth in the Arab world. By most estimates, youth in the Arab world, and when I'm talking youth, I am talking those that are aged 15 to 24, and again, all of you may consider yourself youth, but I'm just speaking right now about those. That youth in the Arab region constitute approximately 25% of the population. There has been no Arab youth generation in history that has been so large. And our region is the youngest region in the world, so we have the highest proportion of youth in our population of any other place in the world. This increase in the proportion of youth in the population pyramid of the Arab world is often referred to as the Youth Bulge, and this is a term that I'll return to later. So the second part of this is health. So at the Faculty of Health Sciences, we tend to dissect and analyze and interpret events and situations through a health lens. That's just our expertise or our significant outcome. But our definition of health is quite broad, and we define it as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. This allows, actually, for dialogue that encompasses almost any aspect of daily life. So what are the links between health and the recent uprisings across the Arab world, and what are the links to youth? The answers to these questions may lie in our understanding of social determinants of health. So social determinants are now recognized as the root cause of health status and well-being. And when I talk about social determinants, I include factors such as income, gender, ethnicity, social class, and education, as well as the more distal factors such as globalization, politics, and world events. We had a lot of information about these factors as they relate to youth in the lead up to recent events. So with respect to income, and this is the percentage of persons, not just young people, living below the poverty line in countries of the region where we have data, we have ranges of 7% to 60%, which is a huge range of people living below the poverty line in Arab countries. There's also vast differences in access to education between countries of the region. So illiteracy for young people, 15 to 24, ranges from less than 1% in some countries of the region to 50% in others. The ratio of illiteracy between women and men, aged 15 to 24, and this is an indicator of gender equality, ranges from 0.34 to 1.08. So again, huge ranges. Youth unemployment is the second highest in our region, of all regions in the world, and stands at about 25%, which is a very high percentage. The links between unemployment and education are clear, and most recent scholarship suggests that the educational system in our region is not preparing young people for the available jobs. The comparison that we make on social determinants is not only between countries, and perhaps the more relevant comparison for the current situation is within countries. So there are increasing gaps, there's increases in the gaps between rich and poor in Arab countries, in almost every Arab country. Social determinants such as these can be discussed at the micro level or at the meso level or at the macro level. And at the macro level, issues such as global politics, global trade, and global economics are those that sustain the more relevant conditions, and they are equally relevant and critical. Richard Horton, who's the editor of The Lancet, one of the premier health journals, states, "Poverty is the greatest human torment today. Poverty is the central human challenge, whether one is a doctor, an economist, an international banker, a politician, or a human rights activist. He goes on to state that the greatest advantage of poverty as a measure of human suffering is that it can be quantified. But he cautions that poverty as measured is a very reductionist idea, because it obscures the human element of suffering and the underlying unjust causes of poverty. In a related statement in a recent report by the Abu Dhabi Gallup poll entitled Egypt, the Arithmetic of Revolution, there's a statement that states, unemployment and poverty alone did not lead to the overthrow of Egypt's government. It was the perceived differences between what should be and what was. So misery alone, they contend, does not create revolution. People must sense moral anger and a sense of social injustice, so the inequities between groups, and perceive that the suffering is not inevitable. These ideas of unequal distribution of misery, a sense of social injustice, and most of all, the perception that we need not suffer, leads, I think, to the next concept that I'll talk about, which is the concept of dignity. And other panelists have brought up this concept as well. So dignity is a concept that's actually quite difficult to define and has been linked to the Kantian dictum that people should be regarded as ends in themselves and never just means to an end. We can talk about that in terms of the recent uprisings in the Arab world as well. So dignity has been suggested to be the epistemological and moral ground of human rights, and both Ramis actually talked about rights. And dignity affords a more qualitative way of understanding human suffering than the quantitative measurement of poverty. The concept of dignity is perhaps easiest to understand through its violations, and 4 such violations have been identified. 1, being ignored or not sufficiently acknowledged. 2, being seen but only as a member of a group, and here I want you to think about the concept of youth bulge. 3, having one's personal space transgressed. And 4, humiliation, and you've heard again about humiliation earlier. I would argue today that youth in the Arab world have actually been exposed to all 4 of these violations of dignity. This exposure to violations of dignity is inequitable, unjust, and wholly unnecessary. So it's actually no wonder that youth in the Arab world, and adults as well, have voiced the need for change. If moving to the concept of agents of change, here again I want to return to the concept of the youth bulge. The youth bulge in the region has often been used to portray our region in a very negative light, and simplistic associations are sometimes made between the youth bulge, so this large percentage of young people, high youth unemployment, and political disenfranchisement on the one hand, with political instability and the term terrorism on the other. However, recent literature has shifted this concept of young people, and rightly so, from an emphasis on young people as problems to young people as assets. The increasing number of youth in the region and the need to meet the demands of education and employment clearly place strains on the existing infrastructure. However, the changing demographics and social status of youth can also be seen as an opportunity to engage their vast untapped potential and dynamic energy. As is evident by the recent events in the Arab world, youth can be very powerful catalysts in their own development and their community's development. They contribute to community change by acting as resources and citizens in their communities. Jeffrey Sachs, who's the director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University and has been traveling in the region with the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, called youth the Arab world's agents of change in a recent op-ed in the New York Times. And he stated that he felt like the most empowering impressions he got out of his trips came in meetings with youth leaders, who he called the real agents of revolutionary change in the region. Finally, to voice. Our understanding of young people's health is that it is greatly enhanced by involving young people themselves in the assessment and analysis of issues that affect their lives. And a ladder of sort of young people's participation has been developed and suggests that there are various levels of possible engagement of young people. The ladder describes 8 types of participation. That at the bottom is manipulation, so how adults may manipulate young people, which is not where we want to be. And at the top, shared decision making. So the top rung actually describes projects or programs that are initiated by young people and empower, and I use that term carefully, young people while providing them with opportunities to access life experiences of adults, so sort of a win-win situation. I want to take a moment to link all the above together. Youth across the Arab world have used their voice to become agents of change and preserve their dignity. They've done this in ways that are unique, bold, and innovative. And they've used their social networks very effectively. Most recently, we've witnessed this taking place in Egypt, Tunisia, Syria, Bahrain, Yemen, and Libya. But it has also been taking place for many years in these countries, as well as in Iraq and Palestine, in Lebanon, in Sudan, and all the other countries of the Arab world. In our research and practice with young people in Lebanon, we've actually been humbled by their energy, their enthusiasm, their optimism, their hope, their sense of justice, and their drive to change conditions that influence us all. In our Qadirun project, we worked with 23 young people from the Burj Al Brajni camp. Their energy and hope, despite the lack of human rights to which they're subjected, was inspirational and a lesson to us all. In focus groups with youth all across Lebanon, in which we asked about protective factors in their lives, we heard their aspirations, but we also heard about the conditions and environments in which they wish to live. And a recurrent theme was their desire to be heard, to have a forum to voice their thoughts and concerns without judgment, and the without judgment part was very important to them. And their desire to be active agents of change. So if we, as adults and powerful others, listen actively to the voices of young people, we'll hear about the structural and social factors that influence their lives, and about the changes that will have to happen in the structures of society in order to support youth to their full potential. So where do we go from here? Youth are the future. And I know that that sounds cliche, but it's in fact the truth. The context described above and the resilience and resourcefulness of youth present, I think, important opportunities for changing the status quo. However, making the most of these opportunities requires answering difficult questions like, how can we distribute money and power equitably? How do we provide opportunity for voice and shed the history of authoritarianism? What do we replace that history with? What kind of society can deliver human dignity? How do today's youth inoculate themselves so they do not fall victim to the diseases of greed and cynicism that dominated the previous 50 years? How do we shake others free from their hopelessness so that they join as change agents? How do we protect the next generation from experiencing the same hopelessness? How do youth move forward to remain healthy and productive members of society? And how do we create venues and opportunities for youth to express themselves and for us to listen? Answers to these questions, and there are, I'm sure, many others, are complex and challenge a business-as-usual approach. Progress is dependent on critical consciousness, and Paulo Freire, who's a Brazilian educator and author of a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed, suggests a problem-posing approach leading to critical consciousness, where the oppressed recognize the cause of their oppression, so that through transforming action they create new situations which make possible the pursuit of fuller humanity. And Freire suggests that apart from inquiry, or apart from praxis, which is dialogue that is informed, individuals cannot truly be human. So knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention. Through the restless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, and with each other. An anthropologist recently coined the term people as infrastructure to describe the web of relations through which we all navigate our lives and environments. Youth have done this extremely well in the current context, and others before that. I think that the recent uprisings only confirm the potential of youth as change agents. Arab youth have the opportunity to shape health, dignity, and voice in the region. And they will do so not only to promote their right to dignity, but also that of others. As succinctly stated by Dean Whitehead in a recent editorial, it is the strength of our collective conscience and the force of deliberate acts that can break the cycle of hopelessness. By working together as infrastructure, and by critically analyzing conditions and dialoguing to deepening understanding and promote change, I believe that youth will be the change that they want to see in the world. Thank you.